I love Guild Wars 2. It's an undeniable fact and I made a video about it which people are still watching to this day. However much I love it, I know that I don't get everything out of it that I possibly could. Sometimes it's because Guild Wars 2 does just allow for you to kind of mindlessly roam about gaily skipping through the fields of Queensdale and just having an excellently chill time while doing some Wizard Vault dailies or something. Sometimes it's because I go off and play other mmorpgs because my brain is a bit wacky and I like to switch things up with a bit of variety. But that is also part of what I love about Guild Wars 2. The fact that I can sleep around with other games and always come back and it will be there waiting for me. But I do want to start getting a bit more out of the games that I play, and Guild Wars 2 in particular is a game that has so much to offer, and so I will be endeavouring to explore more aspects of it and then recording my thoughts and experiences here, starting with PvP. Now I play a lot of mmorpgs and I am not typically a PvP enjoyer in any of them, mainly because I don't consider myself to be that competitive and I am mostly just looking to chill out and adventure about a bit, experience these fantastical digital worlds and sort of look at the scenery a bit. That, and I am absolutely terrible at PvP. I don't know if it's the reflexes or that I don't have that killer instinct, but more often than not I get my poo-poo pushed in and back out the top of my head as I am punted about like a pooey pinata. But skill issues aside, I do think that Guild Wars 2's PvP is some of the most fun that I have experienced owing to the speed and fluidity of the combat and the format. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what is on offer, my experience and any lessons I learned along the way. This obviously isn't going to be a guide, but could serve as a learning tool and supplement to other guides out there as you watch me, a solo, casual old man, try and quite often fail at PvP. You can learn from my mistakes and laugh at me along the way. And there will be plenty of mistakes, trust me. So first up, what do we have here for me to get my teeth into? PvP comes in two forms. You've got your 5v5 battle arena known as structured PvP. And then you've got World v World, which is large-scale group combat involving tens of players at once. Let's cover the structured PvP first. The most popular form of this is like a controlling 3 different points on an arena map. Your team has to defeat opponents and stand on these points to claim them, and the longer you have control of them, the more points that you will get until you reach 500 and then you win. So it is a constant competition to decap the opponent's point and claim them for yourself. See, I am speaking the lingo already. Spoiler warning, this won't ultimately help me, but let's continue. There is a few other different variants, but there is one other main game mode that I have played which includes you trying to take the opposition team's captain and breach their fort in order to win, rather than controlling points on a map. The 5v5 option also has 2 modes, which is unranked and ranked. The latter being true competitive battles where you are competing for your place on a leaderboard. The former is, as it suggests, unranked and just for shits and giggles. Although, as we will find out later, not everyone is laughing. There are rewards for competing in both, but ranked is where the best rewards are to be found, which makes sense. The other form of PvP is World vs World. This has some similarities with structured PvP where you are controlling points, but everything is sort of amped up. Massive groups of players on massive maps where siege weapons are required to knock down walls and break into enemy forts and take them as your own, and typically these will need to be led by commanders, usually experienced players, in order to be effective. Every 5 minutes you receive experience based on how many points your team is holding and how much you contributed to the battle. These are fought between 3 factions for dominance over the map. Let's go through my experience over 5 nights of trying to be a bit more serious about PvP and actively trying to improve, and we'll find out some more info along the way. So, night 1 begins and I decide to tackle structured PvP first. I have pretty much most classes at level 80, so I decided I needed to do a bit of testing to find out which class should I put my efforts into. You can of course learn to use multiple classes, but I think there is some truth in focusing on one or a limited amount to maximise my getting good. So what do we have to choose for? Firstly, I'll just exclude a few of the roster as I just don't really have enough experience with them to be effective. I mean, that's a strong word, and as we get further into this, you could quite successfully argue that it isn't a word that should be applied to my abilities, but I don't have all the time in the world, so better to focus on those classes I have at least learnt the moveset of and played around a bit with. So my Thief is out, the Guardian is out, the Mechanist is out, and the Revenant is out. So what do we have left? Well, we have my first ever character, Fruity Boutte, the Mesmer, who I pretty much used to play through all the story stuff and is the first character I take through any new expansion. But in PvP, I have struggled to find success with him. I did use him in some unranked tests, but quite frankly, I have other plans for him. I mean, look at him. If ever there was a character just gagging to be a troubadour, then it is this fruity little devil. And yes, I am looking forward to the next expansion. We also have my Ranger, which I have played the most PvP battles with, and is probably as enjoyable to play as my Mesmer, and one of the ones that I'm most familiar with the moveset, or at least I thought I was. More on that later. My Reaper Necromancer, which I also enjoy the weapon slash moveset combos, my Elementalist, which I think has potential, and lastly my big chonking Chad of a Char Berserker warrior, Thunderguff. So how did these perform in unranked test matches? The Mesmer was very squishy. Now I should probably disclaimer that certain builds may be squishy under me owing to mistakes and misunderstandings made when setting them up. I am well aware they could be nigh on indestructible in the hands of someone else, just before anyone goes telling me that I'm doing it wrong. I know. This is kind of the point here. I am rubbish, and you can do as I don't do, etc. Anyway, Mesmer. Just pumped into oblivion, quite frankly. The Necro had a little bit more ability to get out of trouble owing to the Shroud ability, but quite frankly I didn't fare much better. The Elementalist showed a little promise with how I could develop the healing side of things, but similarly got dicked. I think I was too obsessed with just making ice golems. The Ranger, Longfart, was easily the most promising initially, with the ability to soak a bit of damage and evade some attacks. And lastly, the Warrior, which yielded surprising results. After trialling the other classes, stopping for dinner and watching a few videos, I had made a couple of changes to his setup and added a few survival utility skills to soak damage or extra heals. The results were surprising because I played the 3 matches that I was playing for the trial of each class, and then I played a couple more to be sure, and I didn't lose any of them with this setup. However, I am far from convinced that this was little more than a coincidence. But either way, it didn't feel as good to play as other classes. So let's have a talk about how I would typically set things up and what made me switch up my thinking. Typically, I would want to load up on skills with the idea of just doing as much damage as possible. I would read the descriptions and all the passives as I set them up and try to coincide them with the moves I had or the weapons I used, but I found out that I was making one crucial mistake in how I played. And this is rather embarrassing, but I just sort of assumed that when it came to skills on my second skill bar or elite skills as they were, that I could just sort of spam them and dump them all down at once. But then I learned that when I drop a well down as a Chronomancer Mesmer and then drop another one, it negates and replaces the first one. So I had literally just been pressing all the buttons at once, but was effectively only using one spell and wasting the rest. So this itself changes my thinking to how I use spells. Better late than never, I guess. And god damn it, I felt so dumb. I had long suspected or sort of known that Guild Wars 2's combat was more about cycling through some of your attack skills and then using your utility skills sort of situationally. For example, to get yourself out of trouble or to take advantage of someone else's situation by trapping them or something. But I obviously hadn't paid enough attention. So this made me ponder what was even on my second bar, and I started to watch a few videos. This chap was quite useful, go check him out. And amongst a number of things I learnt was, I think, one key thing above all else. That being, no matter what, I need to try and stay alive. So I started changing utility skills to allow evasion and damage soaking. This sort of worked, or rather worked a little bit more than what was already a low bar, but one thing that you need to keep in mind when you are trying to escape trouble is using the architecture around you. You need to duck behind walls and give people the runaround, as well as using blinks or blocks, so timing as well as knowing the correct skill to use at any given time is important. Timing is also required for your dodge roll, and I have a terrible habit of immediately starting to hammer the dodge button and burning up both my uses and then just getting mashed. So not only do you have to have very deliberate timing, you need to be calm and not panic. As I play more, it is becoming apparent that I panic quite a bit. Another bad habit is that I tend to either backpedal when attacked rather than turn and run. Walking backwards is obviously very slow in comparison with running forward, but even when I do remember to turn tail, I once again panic and blow through all of my evasion or damage negation and end up getting run down. Watching more experienced players, I can see they climb all over the arena when evading, so it is something I will have to try and get used to. I also use my mouse for movement instead of WASD. I am wondering whether this contributes to my woes and mobility, but I find it tricky to control with WASD and still rotate through attacks. I'm much more effective when my left hand can be free for triggering skills and abilities. I have to mention the current state of PvP in Guild Wars 2, which is that it sort of hasn't really changed much over the years, and I think is often seen as an overlooked part of the game, which is a shame because it can be a lot of fun. I say it can be because there are also some challenges. Clearly, if you want to get good at something, you need to practice. And practice can be a little tricky if you mostly play solo like I do. Sure, you can get into matches fairly easily, but queuing in unranked is often filled with certain pitfalls. Unranked matches are likely to have people playing who don't really care too much and are just having fun, or only doing it to progress through the reward tracks and equally don't take it so seriously, or perhaps like me are just looking to practice without as much pressure. I said as much pressure because there is no guarantee your unranked match will be stress-free. The problem with this is that you sort of make a bit of progress along the reward track no matter whether you sort of win or lose. So this means that bad sportsmanship often takes place, whereby someone will queue for a match, get in and just do nothing. Just stand there. This often means that the teams are uneven and the opposition will quickly press the advantage and you'll get wiped. People will be angrily typing to ask people to report players who do this, but I have reported numerous players who have seemingly spent hours just doing this across multiple matches with absolutely nothing happening to them. I have no idea where those reports go, but they feel ineffectual. I guess it is just a cynical calculation these people have done that it is less effort to just queue and ignore and progress the track than actually play. But I'm going to say this now. You people are fucking cowards. Just be shit and die like the rest of us. Or sometimes they just rage quit and just sit down because things aren't going their way. When I used to play FIFA a lot back in the day, you always had people that would just quit or turn off their console as soon as they went a couple of goals down early on, which was always disappointing. Even if I was getting destroyed, I would play until the end. I guess there is just no honour anymore. Or perhaps these people aren't progressing the reward track at all. perhaps they are just shitty little trolls who get off on knowing they are ruining someone else's good time. Because if there is one thing that is true about structured PvP in Guild Wars 2, it is definitely where you find the majority of the undesirables. Yeah, not all PvP players and all that, don't have a fucking cry about it, but come on, be honest with yourselves. Spending time anywhere else in the game more often than not proves the rule that the Guild Wars 2 community is kind and friendly, and I think many would agree, and as I have said in other videos on the topic, I definitely noticed this over other MMORPGs that I've played. It's part of the reason why I fell in love with the game and always come back to it. But the moment you enter the Mists, which is the PvP staging area where you can adjust your gear and practice your bursts, there I go using terms again like I know what I'm talking about, there is definitely a more boisterous feel to the general area chat. This feels like the general chats in other games, and it is in here where I am likely to see a bit more troublesome language and a bit more aggression. Which makes sense. The whole idea of PvP has a lot more sort of confrontation to it anyway. Even though unranked PvP should be a bit more chill and low stakes, you still get some colossal dickheads who just want to chew other people out for not knowing what they are doing or not playing well enough in their estimation, which is kind of hilarious given that some bellend is giving it big licks in the chat and they have been matchmaked with you, the one who is apparently rubbish. If you are so good, why are you here in unranked with me? Shouldn't you be over in ranked matches chatting about the place? In my experience, this only sort of gets worse in ranked, but at least in ranked there is sort of something on the line. I can kind of understand it. There's something to lose. But it is that age-old problem of how do you get good if you don't practice and make mistakes. And if someone chews you out, you're less likely to keep practicing because no one deserves that shit and you'll just quit and go and do something else. Another problem with this is the random matchmaking, and it is blindingly obvious to anyone that you are always going to play better if you have a predetermined group of friends or some sort of comms like Discord. You can jump in with randoms if you generally know what you're doing and get it going, but finding a team to play with is always going to be the better, more effective option. Which is what I have often said to uppity trolls who drag other people. If you are so good, why don't you go and find a team to play for? Of which I know the answer, and that is that these people are such unpleasant little dickheads that they would end up pissing everyone off with their shitty attitudes. But talking about playing in a group, the next night I decided to log in and do some World v World. This is another very competitive game mode, and while I did see some tea being spilt and a bit of beef flying about in the area chat, it generally seemed more chill and respectful than structured PvP. And it is very enjoyable. I have had a few goes before, but I don't really play it often. But it is worth doing, as I found out, because you can earn currency and essentially buy hero points, which is what you need to purchase all your skills for your elite specialisation. So having learnt this, it felt like I was actually being pretty efficient for once in my Guild Wars 2 life, and I will definitely be playing more of this in order to unlock all my other elite specialisations, rather than getting fucking lost in the Maguma jungle and wondering where the hell I am and how to get to the hero points. Anyway. World v World is a different beast, and you join a map, look for a commander tag, and then join their squad, and then you all run about on your mounts together, flowing over the hills like the crazy Zerg train that you are. I think I prefer this because it's less dueling one-on-one, which I am bad at, and more just being part of a pack. It seems to be that the most important skill here is just following basic instructions and sticking close to your commander. If you mess about, you will find yourself lagging behind the pack and on your own, and quite likely you'll be ambushed by someone who is looking for an easy kill. This first night was great, and we cruised about taking one goal after another. Sometimes it was genuinely exciting, where there were loads of people fighting at once, and I was putting my new survival abilities to use with my soul beast to get out of stuns and shield myself from damage, and it was a glorious chaos. I am definitely more of a soldier than a commander, that is for sure, and whether I was contributing much in the grand scheme of things, I was still having a good time spraying AoE attacks down and just firing into the throng. I logged out that night having earned a lot of experience points and feeling quite satisfied. The next night was not so fortuitous. First I tried a little solo roaming. You can get into a map and just sort of run about capturing some minor points and trying to find other solo roamers to take out, but unsurprisingly I get filled in more often than not. So back to supporting a larger pack. And this didn't exactly go to plan either. If you don't have the numbers in World v World, then those good times of the night before turn into sad times of just getting literally run over by a train of enemies. As someone said on the squad chat, it would seem that the enemy was probably in a more organised group with comms because they were all executing their AoE damage skills at the very same time, and all I would see is a Zerg train coming towards me, and then before I could turn and run, there was just a mass of red fiery rings running over me, and the screen goes grey, and I am dead. We fought valiantly, but ultimately we were no match for such organised defence. Which is something to be considered if you are a casual like myself. You can jump in and find a group running about from time to time, but if you really want to get the most out of it, you will need to join a specific World v World guild who take it seriously. And part of being organised and therefore more effective is going to be the squad composition. So unlike in structured PvP where anyone can jump in and set up their equalised gear, your actual armour and weapons that you wear out in the world during PvE make a difference. So the more serious you take it, the more you will be required to start looking at having the right gear, the right build, the right makeup of different classes within a group, and of course you'll then be at the mercy of the dreaded meta. So while it was fun, and I will dip in from time to time, there was another valuable lesson that came out of it which is just as valid as in structured PvP as it is in World v World, and that is finding the right build. So the next night, I logged on and spent a while looking up builds for various classes, seeing what gear I had, going and purchasing some exotic gear with the right stats where necessary, and I put it all together and then ran around the mist smacking the training dummies about. I was feeling confident that, armed with the knowledge of how the game modes work, having gotten a bit more used to how and when to use skills, and more importantly to not just cancel my last spell when just mashing the keypad, and now with a little more thought put in with a specific build, I entered into Unranked again, full of hope. And immediately got smashed so bad that my dead ancestors probably felt it in the afterlife. Sometimes, if you are down a player, or you are just not as good as the opposition, you can get stuck in this situation where they wipe you out and then sort of force you back to your spawn point and camp you there, and you can't get out because the moment you dare to jump down, you will just get ganked 4-1. The Spanish Mafia gave me a particularly brutal slapping. La puta madre. After multiple games of continual demoralising death, I sat back and gave it some thought. Not only can I not stay alive, but I can't do enough damage when needed to finish someone off. What was I missing? I had heard people using the term burst damage, but I didn't think too much about it. So I went off to YouTube again to watch some more tutorials. In specific, I wondered about trying the Druid class. Maybe I could heal, and whilst the video I watched was kind of involved with a lot of stuff to take in, which I obviously sort of didn't, it did trigger a few more thoughts and ideas. So with my tail between my legs, I logged off again and vowed to come back tomorrow and try and work out a druid build, and also maybe revisit my Mesmer. My thinking being that perhaps I could utilise the Mirage's blink abilities and sort of focus on making myself annoying and hard to hit. So I went to bed thinking about what could be and dreamt of possibility. After I finished work the next day, I once again logged in and started on trying out a few different druid builds for my ranger. One that was based around healing and another that was focused towards condition damage using daggers and a short bow. I took myself to the Maguma jungle and just sort of run about trying it out, and I definitely liked the build. After the jungle, I went to the ruins of ore and carried on familiarising myself with the skills, and it felt like I was melting things a lot faster. Was this the burst damage I had heard of? No, it wasn't. I took her back into unranked and, predictably, I was once again steamrolled. See, while I had messed around with a few builds, I was still doing the equivalent of putting together IKEA furniture whilst sort of ignoring the instructions, which is weird because I always follow the instructions when doing flatpack in real life. Doesn't always go to plan, as I'm sure my partner would tell you, but I do follow them. So with another incremental lesson under my belt, I decided it was time to revisit Fruity Boutte and try out that Mirage build, which also went terrible and failed immediately. But after that defeat, I got a bit more serious about it, and for the first time ever I went to the training area with the Asura training console and started trying different builds and actually looking at my DPS. More importantly, I actually read the part on the build guide that told me what my burst rotation combo was. It had only taken me 3-ish years, but finally I sort of understood what burst damage was, and so I set about practicing my combo burst and my extended combo burst on my greatsword power chronomancer build. I literally doubled my damage output and a bit more on top. As I had played through most of the expansions with the Mesmer and the Greatsword, the abilities it wanted me to use were familiar, that being the Mirror Blade, into split second shatter skill, and then the Mind Stab. If everything was off cooldown, I could start with a Gravity Well and then use the Continuum Split to extend the burst and then throw in some Phantasmal Berserkers as well. This time, I am ready. So let's fucking do this. Come at me, bros. Sadly, my enthusiasm was once again snuffed out by some cowardly fuck AFKing, which meant I lost like 5 games in a row, but the flame was lit. I may have been losing, but I was actually doing reasonable damage and did take a few people down. I could see that I was taking a giant chunk off their health in one burst. And not only that, the blink ability, more than any other similar ability I had used on other classes, really allowed me to move out of range of people and then turn and attack with time to consider what I was doing. More importantly than anything else, it felt good. It felt fun. The last 2 builds I tried would likely work in PvE as well, and so I am going to continue testing those and having fun in other areas of the game. And I think there is a certain poetry about coming full circle all the way back round to my first ever character, the Mesmer. So it was that I made it to the end of my 5 nights playing PvP in Guild Wars 2. I was still crap, but I had definitely made some improvement. And no matter what any weird psychopaths tell you, it isn't about the winning, it's about getting better, little by little, and having a good time. So here's to the real ones. The real ones who die with honour while some twat AFKs back at base. We salute you. Thanks for watching. Whilst frustrating getting railed so hard for 5 nights in a row, it was a lot of fun, and I look forward to making some more videos on other areas of Guild Wars 2 that I have put off getting into. Not sure what video I will do next, but at some point in the near future, I am due to play through the original Guild Wars, so keep your eye out for that, and hopefully, I'll see you on the next one.